It's the first time we're hearing about this group in Hawaii, but ICE has made similar arrests in at least 16 states.
America, the most violent gang in the Western Hemisphere, just got caught exploiting Hawaii's massive drug trafficking network. ICE arrested 44 people in Kauai, including 2 with ties to Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan terrorist organization that's now using Hawaii's tourism industry and carefree culture to distribute methamphetamine and other drugs. But here's what's really disturbing. I'm surprised we haven't heard about TDA in Hawaii sooner, because the islands have always been a major drug trafficking hub with sky-high meth addiction rates. Maybe the laid-back Hawaiian culture made it impossible for locals to imagine that transnational criminals were operating right under their noses.
On Wednesday, 44 people were arrested in the ICE raids on Kauai, and officials say 2 are suspected associates of TDA.
What is up, guys? Tyson Dela Cruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. This story shows how foreign terrorists are exploiting America's most vulnerable communities. While locals are crying about illegals getting picked up, they're ignoring the fact that these are criminals who chose to enter our country illegally and are now poisoning Hawaii communities with deadly drugs. Let me break down why Hawaii has always been a perfect target for drug trafficking operations. The islands have been dominated with high rates of methamphetamine use for decades, with widespread marijuana distribution creating established networks for foreign criminals to exploit.
Federal authorities made dozens of arrests on Kauai today as part of a joint effort involving Homeland Security, the FBI, the Drug Enforcement Agency, and ICE. According to a post on their Facebook page, Kauai County says a total of 44 people were arrested as a result of 6 federal search warrants that were executed at multiple homes and 1 business on the Garden Isle.
Hawaii's geographic isolation, tourism economy, and existing drug problems have made it a perfect place for transnational criminals to operate. You've got thousands of tourists coming and going, limited law enforcement resources, and a culture that's so accepting and carefree that locals can't imagine that TDA tourists are setting up shop in paradise.
And officials say 2 are suspected associates of TDA.
It's the first time we've heard that name associated with Hawaii.
The fact that 2 of the 44 people arrested have suspected ties to Tren de Aragua shouldn't surprise anybody. TDA specializes in exploiting existing drug networks, and Hawaii's meth crisis has created a perfect infrastructure for them to expand their operations. These Venezuelan terrorists are incredibly sophisticated and have been spreading across America for years. The fact that this was the quote-unquote first suspected link to Hawaii probably just means that they've been operating under the radar.
U.S. federal agencies call Tren de Aragua a transnational criminal network. One county council member who saw the arrest says while the raid was loud and unnerving, the agents wearing Homeland Security shirts were professional.
As many of you know or may not know, TDA operates as a transnational criminal network that specializes in taking over existing drug markets. Hawaii's established methamphetamine problem and tourist-based economy make it an ideal target for them to exploit. The retired FBI agent's comments about this being the first time that we've heard about TDA associated with Hawaii tells me a couple different things. Tells me that they've probably been operating there for months or maybe even years without detection. Hawaii's carefree culture and accepting attitude towards outsiders makes it a little bit easier for foreign criminals to blend in. The fact that these criminals were working for cleaning companies that services the hospitality industry shows you exactly how they were exploiting Hawaii's tourism economy to distribute drugs.
County Council member Fern Holland lives across from one of the raided Kapahi homes in Kapa'a, where she saw more than a dozen people arrested. We're told they worked for a cleaning company that services the hospitality industry.
Think about how perfect this cover is. Cleaning companies have access to hotels, resorts, vacation rentals, and tourist areas throughout the island. They can move freely between properties, interact with both locals and visitors, and use a legitimate business as cover for drug distribution.
We live in a very quiet area in Upper Kapahi. It's pretty quiet. It's a rural area. And so I could hear steps in the street. So I walked outside and I realized immediately that there was like an entire army of people. It was like there was probably 20 or 30 agents walking up the street.
When you need that many agents for one operation, you're dealing with a major criminal enterprise that's been operating for a significant period of time. The community's response to this raid perfectly shows how Hawaii's acceptable culture has been exploited by foreign criminals. Instead of being grateful that dangerous criminals were removed, some locals, and we know which ones, are defending people who chose to enter our country illegally.
We have people here who possibly are undocumented, but yet they're doing the work that a lot of people won't do. That's what I want to find out. What's really going on? Were these people being trafficked?
Listen to this community member. We have people here who possibly are undocumented, but yet they're doing the work that a lot of people don't want to do. This is exactly the kind of naive thinking that allows criminal organizations to operate. These weren't victims being trafficked. These were criminals who chose to enter our country illegally and are now connected to terrorist organizations.
Neighbors, these are our loved ones. These are folks who are working 3 jobs just to get by. And those are the people being picked up and put in federal detention.
The immigration advocate calling these criminals our loved ones and are claiming they're working 3 jobs just to get by is absolutely ridiculous. They are foreign criminals who are poisoning Hawaii communities with drugs while exploiting the tourism industry. Unfortunately, community members are crying about illegals getting picked up, but they're ignoring the fact that these are criminals who chose to enter our country illegally and are now making Hawaii's existing drug problems even worse.
A raid that nets 40-plus detainees on Kauai tells you that ICE had solid intelligence about immigration violations, and this wasn't just a random sweep.
Hawaii's primary drug problem has always dominated by high rates of methamphetamine use and its severe consequences, followed by the widespread marijuana distribution. TDA is now exploiting these existing networks to expand their operation.
ICE raids are happening across Hawaii more than most people know. The latest ICE raids on Kauai Wednesday led to 44 arrests from homes and businesses, but it's happening across the islands. Right now, former Miss Hawaii Cheryl Bartlett's husband and Brazilian citizen Rogerio Araujo was detained outside of their Oahu home. He now faces deportation at any moment. And ICE raids in Kona have been targeting undocumented farm workers all year. According to Pilar Cam with UH Refugee and Immigration Law Clinic, people detained on neighbor islands are brought to Oahu's federal detention center.
These criminals are probably more than likely operating through the island's chain.
On one hand, yes, go get the criminals. We don't want you here. We want to be safe on our island.
That is exactly the right attitude. You need to be removed immediately.
For me, thinking that there's gang members that could have potentially been living across the street is obviously very concerning.
The fact that TDA has successfully infiltrated Hawaii shows how foreign criminals are exploiting America's trusting communities. Hawaii's laid-back, accepting culture made it impossible for locals to imagine that transnational terrorists are setting up drug distribution networks in paradise. This isn't just about immigration. This is about national security. When Venezuelan gang members are using Hawaii's tourism industry to distribute methamphetamine and other drugs, they're not just breaking immigration law, they're poisoning American communities and funding terrorist operations. The 44 arrests are probably just the tip of the iceberg here. If TDA has been operating in Hawaii long enough to establish cleaning companies as cover and hospitality industry connections, there are probably hundreds more criminals throughout the island who haven't even been caught yet. Hawaii's geographic isolation and limited law enforcement resources make it a perfect place for criminal organizations to operate. America, the infiltration of TDA, Tren de Aragua in Hawaii should be a wake-up call for every community who thinks that they're safe from the consequences of Biden's open border policies. These Venezuelan terrorists didn't choose Hawaii randomly. They chose it because the islands provide perfect conditions for drug trafficking operations. Hawaii has always been a major drug trafficking area because its geographical location, tourism economy, and existing use of drugs. TDA is now exploiting these vulnerabilities to expand their criminal empire into paradise. The community members crying about illegals getting picked up need to wake up and realize these aren't innocent immigrants. These are criminals who chose to enter our country illegally and are now poisoning Hawaii communities with deadly drugs. Maybe, just maybe, because the culture in Hawaii is so carefree and accepting, locals couldn't imagine that transnational criminals were operating right under their noses. But that naive attitude is exactly what these terrorists count on to establish their operations, brother. I am personally surprised that we haven't heard about TDA in Hawaii sooner, but the fact that this is being called the first suspected link probably means that they've been operating under the radar for months, maybe even years. The 44 arrests are just the beginning of what's probably a much larger criminal network. Hawaii's tourism and drug problems created a perfect storm for TDA infiltration. Now it's time for locals to stop defending criminals and start supporting law enforcement officers who are trying to protect their communities, brother. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.